Hey everybody, today we are going to be going over a candlestick pattern called the shooting star. And before I jump into what a shooting star is, we will be going over quite a few different videos on different candlestick patterns. This is the first of many, so definitely like and subscribe if you find value in this video, because there will be a lot of other videos that highlight different candlestick patterns, both on the bullish side as well as the bearish side. Now, when I say bullish or bearish, I do not mean that any candle that forms is definitely going to become a bullish move to the upside or a bearish move to the downside. All of these candlesticks, as well as any setup in the market, is simply based on probabilities. There will never be a 100% chance that a setup is definitely going to go up because you have a shooting star candle, or down in the example of shooting star, or up if, let's say, that you have a hammer candle form. Now, what creates a higher probability for these setups is where they are located within the chart. So for example, we have a shooting star here, and what a shooting star is essentially it's an inverted hammer at the top of a trend. So the characteristics are essentially a very long wick, one, two, a new high that is formed within the uptrend, three, a wick that is barely existent or a close pretty much at the low of the candle. In this case, you can see there's a slight wick here, but you can see that the body is pretty much at the bottom of the candle's range. And you really want to have a red candle. You definitely could have a green candle. That means a green close for whatever candle you're looking at. But ideally, for a shooting star, to give it a higher probability, you definitely want to have a red candle. So these are some of the things that you definitely want to consider when looking for a shooting star. Now, the thing about a shooting star in any candlestick pattern, and really any setup in the market in general, is it can be on any time frame. In this case, I'm on the weekly chart for the Russell 2000 futures chart, and this could be applied to literally a 1-minute chart. So all of these different setups are fractal. It's not just, a shooting star forms on the weekly, but it's not relevant in a shorter time frame or a longer time frame. These setups are fractal, and you can use them literally on anything you're looking at, but they do have to have specific characteristics. And as I mentioned, we just went over the characteristics of the actual candle, but that doesn't suffice all of the rules for this candle. You really need to have a strong uptrend when you are looking for a shooting star, because what happens is you'll get a false signal if you're just looking for the characteristics of just the candle and you're not taking into account where that candle is within a trend or on the chart in general. So if you take, for example, this candle here from October of 2023, notice we have a very similar candle here. You've got a wick, and then you've got a body at the bottom with a small wick below the body. And a lot of people may think that is a shooting star. Well, based on the characteristics, yes, that would be a shooting star, at least the characteristics of the candle, but it is not in the location that we would want to see a shooting star. As I mentioned, a shooting star occurs after an uptrend. You want to see a new high put in here at the top of the trend. And so when you have a candle like this in October of 2023, all this is pretty much an inside bar. It wouldn't be considered any type of shooting star candle. The shooting star really comes from it being at the top of the trend. And so that is just something to remember with the shooting star, but also any candle setup it's just not the physical characteristics of the actual candle. You do need to have the trend side, and is it located in the right part of the trend for it to truly be a candle that has a high probability of either an upside reversal or a downside reversal. Now, interestingly enough, if you have a shooting star at the bottom of a very big downtrend, a lot of the time that would be considered an inverted hammer. So you can literally have the same candle at the bottom of the trend, which would suggest that we're nearing the bottom of that downtrend. So the trend is a huge part of the candle. So as I mentioned, the main things to focus on here are trend and the characteristics. Now, for invalidation of the setup or a trigger for the setup, you definitely, for invalidation, do not want to see a new high put in after this shooting star. Now, technically, you could have two shooting stars that form, maybe a slightly higher high and then the same exact candle. That would be essentially kind of a double shooting star there. But if you have a move above and you have any type of candle close above the previous, essentially the shooting star close, that is definitely going to put the probability of this playing out to the downside much lower. So that's definitely something to consider for invalidation. As I mentioned, these are all probabilities. There's no such thing as a shooting star playing out to the downside every single time. And so that's something a lot of people forget, is this is not a game of guarantees. It's a game of probabilities, and that's why invalidations and triggers are so crucial. So as I mentioned, invalidation would definitely be a move above the shooting star candle's high, above the top of the wick. And if you have a close above the top of the wick, that's even more of a probability that this is likely not going to play out. Now, for the downside, you definitely want to see a break below the shooting star low as kind of your trigger for the downside move. And you can see here, initially, for this candle going into the beginning of 2024, we actually opened above the top of this candle. So you didn't really have a trigger for downside until you broke the actual low of this candle, and then that would have been your trigger for downside. And you can see here, since we broke the low of this shooting star, we had a pretty strong move to the downside. So something to keep in mind here, that you do also want to have not only the characteristic of the shooting star, the location of the shooting star within the trend, but you also definitely want to have those invalidations and those triggers, so you're not just randomly entering a position with this type of setup without some type of systematic trigger to keep the trade systematic versus just saying, oh, I'm going to buy this because it looks bearish. You really have to keep things in a systematic manner, or you're going to find yourself not really going by any rules. You'll just be going off emotion, and that a lot of the time will really hurt a trader. So these are kind of the main things that I wanted to focus on. The last thing that I wanted to focus on here is really, one, you want to see the shooting star in an uptrend for the downside move. As I mentioned, the trigger is a break below that previous low of the shooting star. And then if you are around a resistance zone, that's even more. Now you can see here, this isn't perfect. You can see here that we essentially did break out of the this long-term horizontal resistance zone before we got the shooting star. But if you can see a shooting star forming and closing right at a resistance zone, that gives even more high probability that this could play out, but you still have to have your trigger. Probabilities are probabilities until you actually have a trigger triggered or you have an invalidation hit. So invalidation, as I mentioned, close or break above the shooting star high. And then the shooting star itself needs to be followed by a candle that breaks that low, really, for that downside trigger. So these are things that are really important going into this whole educational series on candlesticks in general. These will be rules that are applied to any candlestick pattern that we look at going forward. And as I mentioned, if you do like these videos, please like and subscribe. There's a lot of other educational videos that have already been posted, and you can check those out in the Optimus Futures YouTube channel, just in the videos library. And if you are interested in futures trading, Optimus Futures is a futures broker, and so you can trade futures, you can trade micros on this particular platform. And then I'm using Optimus Flow, which is their technical analysis platform when you are doing any analysis with Optimus Futures. So as I mentioned, if you have any questions or if you do like these videos, please like and subscribe. And if you do have questions, you can send them and post them in the comments section. If you have questions about this particular video, if you have questions about signing up for Optimus Futures or anything like that, you can do that, or you can just reach out and go to optimusfutures.com and reach out to the support team. So thank you so much for watching. We will be doing a lot more videos like this, so definitely keep in mind that this is definitely not the only candlestick pattern we'll be going over, and we hope to see you in the next video when we do more of these candlestick videos.